And how's it going? My name's Logan, and I'm the host of the Spiritual Danger Closed podcast. In today's episode, I offer an experimental idea which compounds, and rather expounds on, the idea of goal setting along with planning and with the concept of SMART, which is specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, time-related. In this, I discuss the addition of 3 more letters to the SMART concept, and at the end, I hope to offer what specific, measurable, assignable, accountability, realistic, time-related initiative, execution, and spiritual goal planning looks like. Finally, I offer this as an open invitation to test this out in a few weeks, months, and later this year to follow up to ask how it went for you. Introduction. Question. Do you have any Smarties? You know, the ones that are delicious, compact, flavorful sugar chews wrapped in that iconic cellophane? While I got you thinking about sugar, take a moment and reflect on whether or not you started any New Year's resolutions. While I have had every bit of intention to get this post out prior to the new year, I sadly did not make it, but did so poorly on the execution. One thing led to another, and so here we are. We are just now getting this article out, and if what I have to say helps you or just one person, I will be successful. Onward, we dive into goal setting, keeping New Year's resolutions, or to make those, keep New Year's resolutions, or those we make on our journey. I hope to offer a nuance to your previous conceptions of goal setting. I discuss a background of goal setting, concept of SMART, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-related, and tie it into spirituality and anything relevant from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on this topic. SMART history. In 1981, George T. Doran published his article, quote, "There's a smart way to write management goals and objectives," end quote, wherein he gives a very simple framework of SMART. Doran explains that managers, and I would add individuals, quote, "Objectives represent a threat to their position," end quote, on our own end goals. Well, what is a goal exactly? Simply put, it's an individual or collective belief or philosophy of a desirable outcome, whether it is in the short term or long term. The problem is we can have a goal but fail to define exactly what it is. Quote, goals represent unique executive beliefs and philosophies, end quote. Doran's SMART system works by being specific with your goal, measuring and quantifying it in a meaningful way, and assigning it to an individual, realistically attainable based off of available resources, and there must be a time frame. Doran explains that you don't need to define each of the 5, just have enough of the 5 segments to begin. That along the way you learn to adjust, but that often that means managers and ourselves have to deal with setbacks or misfits. No matter what you do, to some individuals, they're never going to adopt the goal, philosophy, or belief, thereby potentially hindering the potential progress. Whether it be by procrastination, uncertainty, or poorly defined, unattainable, no accountability, lack of adequate resources, too much emphasis on perfection, etc., or sometimes even the rare saboteur. You know who you are. Smarties. I too, like many, have set goals, forgot about them, and did it. Finished it, achieved some, failed, stumbled, and all of that is in between. In reflecting on my goals from 2022, I had a sad moment of reflection that I wasn't as successful as I hoped. Why was that? Where did I go wrong? After all, in my mind, I was applying Doran's SMART framework. For example, I said I wanted to ride 4 fondos, which is a 100-kilometer bike ride in one go. Originally, I thought 4 fondos seems pretty attainable. That would just be 1 fondo every 90 days. Bam, right there, I would meet my goal. Guess who didn't work? Yep, I failed to get to that goal by not having done one fondo throughout 2022. I felt frustrated with myself, which led to me to start reflecting. What I realized is that what I am now personally implementing and what I propose is specific, measurable, assignable, accountability, realistic, time-related, initiative, execution, and spiritual goal setting. While I don't know exactly what your goal is, I hope to provide enough examples for you to relate these concepts personally. Specific. Doran's take is adequate in that we need to be specific in what we hope to accomplish, because if we don't, then nothing will be done. Think of your goal in the simplest form as necessary. Sometimes our goals are combinations of smaller goals. Try to examine your goal and break it down into its simplest components. A Christian philosopher, William Ockham, proposed philosophical arguments are best understood by the simplest form possible, which was later coined Occam's razor. We all want to be a billionaire, but we should realize that billionaires were once multimillionaires, millionaires, etc. Quote, choose goals that are realistic, which can be done on a regular basis. Remember that the Almighty loves acts that are consistent. So start small, work on it instead of trying to do it all at once and then quickly losing steam. End quote. If you can try to reduce your goal to the simplest form, for example, I said I wanted to do 4 fondos, which was at most 400 kilometers of riding for the whole year. While I think of myself as a cyclist, it does take time, training, and consistency and building of the endurance to sit on a bicycle for a 100-kilometer ride. In the last 3 years, the longest I went was 99.96 kilometers because someone's miles to kilometer conversion math was off. Can your goals be sliced into thinner bite-sized pieces? Quote, goal setting is essentially beginning with the end in mind, and planning is devising a way to get to that end. End quote. Measurable. How do you measure a goal? What are things you can use as guideposts to know if you're progressing along adequately? Is it running a certain number of miles, staying within your budget, volunteering a certain number of hours, etc.? I would argue that if you can't measure your goal in some form, you are not being clear in specifying. Sure, some things are abstract, like setting a goal of being more loving to your partner. Well, how do you show your partner more love? By setting apart specific days to be alone with them from the children, doing chores, job, to have time together. In this scenario, let's say your partner wants to go out on a date once a month. Here, we now have something to measure. Assignable accountability. We need to assign the goal, but we need to be accountable in it. This differs from Doran's definition. I can tell you to go walk 30 minutes a day, but if there's no accountability involved, why even assign it? While I could go into the managerial, supervisory, or even mentor subtopics, I just want you to realize that this is for you or your family. While these are arguably important, I don't want to digress too long from the importance of assigning a goal for someone to work on. Maybe your goal is to keep your home clean. You and your spouse call a family meeting to find what chores need to be done and then who needs to do those chores. When we don't do these tasks, there needs to be an accountability aspect. When it comes to an individual assignment of goals, it's hard to hold yourself accountable. Recently, I discovered that the need for my dear wife, my supervisor or mentor, etc., must be involved and hold me accountable. What does that look like individually? Personally, I find the embarrassment to be a strong motivator for accountability, to keep me focused and on time. You should discuss what repercussions will occur by failing to stay the course with someone you trust. Save the fiction for the storytelling. Realistic. Save the fiction for the storytelling. Goals must be grounded in reality. If not, they are nothing more than wishful thinking and pleasant daydreams. I have a fitness app called Strava. This doesn't represent an endorsement. which presents a monthly challenge, often involving a time or distance of a variety of physical activities. I could say I want to run a marathon every month, but right now I'm likely to do 13 kilometers at best. We should follow Occam's razor and have already something specific. That includes a realistic goal. Apart from the realism is doing research on your goal. What things need to happen prior to your goal. Let's say you wanted to do an open mic night for a comedy routine. Here we go. Here we should look for the when, the where, the who, and surrounding, and the what surrounding it. Oh, look, they do an open mic night at the local diner. That's the where. Oh, the first Friday of every month. That's the when. I need to call and speak with the manager. That's the who. And since it's a family restaurant, I need to prepare clean jokes. That's the what. Quote, as you set goals, start with what's simple. Then, as you practice and persist, your capacity will increase. Time-related. Time-related coincides with measurable. We should also look at our goals in terms of how and when small tasks need to be done. Hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, and so on. We should have a means for tracking the time, such as calendar reminders, setting alarms, etc. How much time is needed for you to adequately work on that goal? For example, let's say you want to work on poetry prose. You decide that 10 minutes each day you will work on writing. You set an alarm and you get to work. Lately I found getting sidetracked is a personal hindrance, so I like to set alarms for what I'm currently working on to meet my other daily tasks. Apart from nuanced changes previously discussed, the next three sections are wholly my working concept. Initiative. In role-playing, each character, to monster, has initiative. What it means is the higher the initiative, the faster the response the individual has. We too all have varying degrees of initiative, from being inherent go-getters to patient doers. In our day-to-day life, initiative isn't something most people are generally cognizant of. For those who are self-aware, it's apparent from an outside perspective. Let's say your child comes to you and explains they want to go to space camp. They found out where the camps are held. They found the various brochures and pamphlets. They found out requirements, time, preparatory actions, and to your amazement, they even found out the cost and broke it down over a few months, etc. They hope you can give them permission and allow them a loan of their allowance to pay for the camp. That is initiative. Let us flip the script. Now your child comes to you with the same proposal but has done no research with the space camp, starting in a week. The reality is, in the first scenario, I am far more likely to happen. You could have had all the hope in the world, but without initiative, your good intentions are just wishful thinkings. If you're taking the time to plan your goals, we're being specific with events or outcomes, measured your goalposts, assigned accountability, and were realistic and looked at the timetables, then the initiative is also preparatory work. Are you doing it to ensure you can go after? Additionally, if you're realistic, you did some research, and you should have some information necessary to start taking initiative. Furthermore, initiative is also a reflection of your own self-desire and willingness to do everything necessary to accomplish the goal. I should note that sometimes we must set goals we aren't really a fan of, so we should try to plan for ways to make it exciting, which starts with optimism towards the task. Execution. Execution phase is when you'll have to go do the things necessary to bring fulfillment to your goal. Here is when you go to the open mic night. You take your child to the space camp. You show up for race day registration. You get your kit on and you go ride that 100 kilometers on a brisk morning, etc. Enjoy the moment. You place so much energy into the process, you should enjoy the moment. I would argue that the execution stage is the most enjoyable aspect of this whole process. You have been thinking about the X, Y, and Z, and now it's finally here. Then after all the hard work, planning, and effort to put into it, it is done. You showed up, you made it, you crossed the finish line. Now that you executed it, you need to review. What worked? What didn't work? What could have been better next time? How accountable were you? What initiative did you have, etc.? Really think about the process. And I would suggest record and journal it, especially if it's something like running a marathon and doing stand-up comedy or hosting a bake sale or whatever else you're likely to repeat. The self-reflection must be 100% brutally honest. That way, next year, you know what worked and what didn't work. Spiritual. This is likely going to be controversial to some, but it is a foundation stone of my blog and podcast, Righteous Controversy. If your goal is framed in a perspective of spiritual or eternal fulfillment, then it is not a very good one. Elder Vern P. Stunfill of the 70 for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints discussed how goals are gateways of becoming. We should also remember that while we want to play the guitar like Eddie Van Halen, he spent decades practicing the craft. We shouldn't hold ourselves back due to the perfection or lack of, but realize that we are specifying a goal that involves practice. Stanfill reminds us, quote, "The Lord teaches us line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little," end quote. So we should realize what it will take, time, work, and initiative on our part to be successful. Apart from becoming is this framing of who we want to be and recalling the profound words offered by Christ Jesus in his intercessory prayer. Quote, "And this is life eternal, that they may know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent," end quote. Elder Stanfill quotes President M. Russell Ballard and President Dallin H. Oaks of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and driving home his thoughts on what that goals are meant to be eternally reflective of our divine nature. We are often held up by the here and now, falling into the entrapments of life, and forget to keep our perspective on the eternal. One aspect I deeply admire of our brothers and sisters in Islam is their emphasis on this very matter. The devout Muslim is always viewing the world through this lens. Now, life isn't perfect, which means we often are stuck with tasks we must do. However, when we are setting about individual goals, we should do so with the very same emphasis and ask ourselves how this helps me. I recognize that some people have many walks of life that follow or listen or read my thoughts. The principle still applies to you. If you aren't being benefited in the long term, it's probably not a very good goal. This doesn't mean you can't choose something that we enjoy, but that we could improve ourselves and potentially others by selecting goals that have long-term and eternal benefits. If you are irreligious, think about it in this. How are you being fulfilled by the goal? What outcomes does it have? Where does it lead you? Ideally, you should be thinking about spirituality in the specific setting phase. Smarties in action. Here, I want to demonstrate, do a little demonstration of how I personally have been using Smarties. Please forgive me here as I use it yet again in another goal centered around fitness. In lifting, there are several pinnacle exercises, mainly bench press, deadlift, and squatting, which are known as the Big Three. The Big Three are used to identify your strength, and by performing all three lifts, to lift as much as you can and then totaling the score. There are what we call 5 weight clubs based off of the total of your Big Three. That's the 500 pounds, 750, 1,000 pounds, 1,500, and 2,000 pound clubs. Right now, I'm in the 500 pound club and wanting to move up to the 750 with my current lifts totaling 665 pounds, which means I must add 83 pounds across all three lifts in order to make 750 pounds. Below is a visualization with bullet points to demonstrate what this process looks like. While it is directional, it should be noted that Doran's SMART process and SMARTIES is a continual process and doesn't necessarily need to be done in order if you are meeting the intent behind the process. Starting with specific, I want to join the 750-pound club. Measurable, the big 3 scores. What are my current lifts? Assigning accountability. That's my spouse, friends, and a fitness group. Realistic. I'm currently at 665 pounds. That's only 83 pounds across 3 lifts. Time related. I want to do this by the end of 2023, potentially by August. That means 4 to 6 days a week, 45 to 60 minutes each exercise or each day of working out. Initiative. I'm already in the gym and I need to find a better strength routine. Execution. I need to test my big 3 lifts every 12 weeks to see how I'm progressing. And when I finally do test it and am successful, I need to evaluate how well my plan went. Spiritual. This will be personally fulfilling for following the law of health and recognizing my body's importance and keeping it strong, as well as fulfilling aspects of my patriarchal blessing. Invitation. If you are up for it, I invite everyone reading or listening to apply Smarties method. If you have already set goals, you can still evaluate where you're at, and if you haven't been, this is a great time to do so. If you're planning to use this, I want to hear how it's going. I plan on making a follow-up to this topic later in the year. Additionally, if you need someone to bounce ideas off or need someone to be accountable, I am all for it. I feel better now that I finally finished this goal of making this post and this episode. I hope you all the very best, and I hope to hear how it is going for you.